students, for today's lesson, I would like you to quickly take a look at your TA3 2023. If you take a look, you would see that for some of you, you had more difficulty with the editing component. Some of you have difficulty with both the editing and the narrative comprehension component. So I hope that you do not just skip through the entire video. You take some time to listen to the explanation and better understand how some of the answers were derived. If there were things that are unclear, please ask questions to clarify so that you can better understand why certain responses are more preferable, or why is there a certain way to analyze the question differently. Okay, so we'll look at the editing component first. For editing component, there were some of you who were able to get, let's say, 8 to 10. There are a handful of you who had a little bit more struggle and you were getting about 5 and 6 marks. So for this here, remember one key thing that I always mention is that at the very start, you look out for the tense of the text, right? So in this situation, you are talking about something that is still ongoing, still being developed. So you know that for the tense for this particular paragraph, it has to be in present tense. And when you look through this here, there are some carelessness that I noticed. So for instance, if you take a look at some of the phrases they are using, you can't exactly break them up. So for example, for number 4, spending the bomb, you know that is a figurative speech, right? Spending a bomb on something means that you spend a lot of money on something. So in this case here, some of you thought that this was the error. You thought that it was spending the money on a sofa, okay? But between this and this, I would say this is the more prominent error. Yeah, so this is still okay, not something that we find ourselves using very commonly, but I would say this is definitely a very obvious error compared to this one over here. Then for the next one, I saw some students saying that you took instead of taking measurements. Okay, so here you know that if you are buying a sofa, of course you need to have some measurements, right? So you can see this portion is talking about being able to do AR measurements. So you have to read from the context as well to double check and see which one is the likely error. Now there's another one that was quite common. Another common error was this one. Some of you said with the app, okay, but I think this one here, they're trying to say what can be done. So I would say that through may be a bit more accurate in portraying the use of the application. Okay, so you take a look at your answers and you match back and see whether or not you're able to tell why your answer was unacceptable. Okay, now let's go on and look at this particular text. I didn't look through your inserts to double check if you have done annotations, but I really want to encourage everybody to annotate your text, because when you annotate your text, it guides your reading, it helps you to make sure that you're on track, it forces you to analyze, and it helps you to keep track of whatever you are analyzing. So if you are a lit student, you know that this is essential, but with the kind of text that we are getting for narrative comprehension, they can be quite requires a lot of inference, requires you to do a lot of close reading. So the question is rather why are you not annotating? Why are you not trying to maximize the analysis just so that you can understand the text a bit better? Yeah, so the question you have to ask yourself is, if you're not going to start practicing this skill, especially during a non time condition for you to grow this skill, to hone this skill, then when do you plan to do this? I really don't know. Yeah, so please get started. Alright, and then when you're doing the question, from what I noted, I don't see many students doing much question analysis. And when you don't do question analysis, you may end up missing keywords, or you may miss out certain requirements from the question. So these are just reminders I'm sure your lower sec teachers have given you. So again, please get started practicing some of these skills so that they are not foreign to you and you can apply them very naturally whenever you see any questions or any passage. Okay, for this, it wasn't so well done. I think there were only a handful who were able to get, let's say, 13 upon 20 and above. So this text here, some of you from the informal poll in the WhatsApp group, you mentioned that it was difficult because the passage was hard to understand. And then for some of you mentioned that the questions were quite demanding. So when I'm going through this, please make sure that you don't just skip ahead and ignore whatever I have to explain, but really listen to what I have explained and realize like how you could interpret it slightly differently, or how you could clarify your understanding. Okay, let's go on. So this particular question, most of you were able to get 2 marks. Okay, so this is really a giveaway. Most people were able to get this. Some students who were not able to give the same meaning as worn out mentioned ancient. So I would like to clarify that something that's ancient is not necessarily worn out, but if you say that it is faded or if it's battered, then it's definitely worn out. So for instance, if I say that the Chinese language is an ancient language, okay, more than 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 years old, then I cannot say that it's worn out, right? Yeah, so ancient did not necessarily mean worn out. And a good reminder for everyone is, if you're quoting something, it's good to use a quotation mark. And for this question, thankfully nobody made this mistake. Sometimes students forget that when you're asked to give 2 separate words, it means that it is not a phrase. It is not two. It's not 2-word phrase. You are really giving 2 separate words. Alright, so this is a common mistake some students make for some other papers. But thankfully for this time around, there isn't. But I did see this as a mistake. Okay, now next question. What do you think Dan's first job was? And you are to support your idea with one detail from the paragraph. So this was from the paragraph. This was the evidence. And I know that it says that he interviews people. And over here, this is a clue where he interviews people, why he interviews people. So you can imagine this: New York Times, New Straits Times, for us it's the Straits Times, yeah. So whenever you see Times, you know that it's likely to be a newspaper article, and then who works at the newspaper outlet, right? So it has to be likely a reporter or a journalist. So I can't say that he is an interviewer because many people have to interview as part of their job scope. Alright, so this here would be the only acceptable answer. Moving on, this question is a typical question where they give you a chunk of information from the text and excerpt, and they ask you very clearly to pick something out from this excerpt, okay, to show your understanding. So here I hope that you had circled or you had underlined certain keywords, for instance, phrase. So some students mention something that's way longer than a phrase, or a phrase that is not so concise. And then over here, you see the keyword here is only a minor role. Minor role means that I would have to look out for words that hint at the size of the role, right? So the only word I could see that is relevant or similar is small for now. Okay, and then when I scrub through the entire passage, I know this is asking about his role in the making of the feature film. So a feature film would be something like the Odyssey or Spider-Man currently. So he's gazing at the faded poster. He's trying to look out for his name there, and you know that on posters you usually see people being credited based on their contribution or how significant a role they are in the movie. So for him, he could see his name, looked in the small print below the big names, and seen his own name as the screenwriter. So that was his role. His role was the screenwriter, but it's a very, very small print, alright, and he was only one of the screenwriters. So one of the screenwriters versus small print, which one clearly shows that he has a minor role? I would say small print is more accurate. Alright, so one of them, it could be something else. It could be one of the big screenwriters. But if you're not, for example, you're not the main screenwriter, I don't think you'll be featured so prominently. You can make some reference to some other posters of current feature films currently. Okay, so between this entire point over here, I would say the most accurate one to show that the minor role, this should be a noun. Okay, so it should be this. Okay, so small print is the most accurate one. Now the next one here, give 2 pieces of evidence to show that he was unhappy about having to rewrite the script. So there is this character over here, Solomon Peebles, right? And how do you know that he was upset? So Solomon Peebles being mentioned twice, the director we can ignore. So Solomon Peebles here was in diapers when this person had already been writing a dozen books and 4 movie scripts. So he's trying to say that this person Dan was trying to say that as a writer, as a screenwriter, as an author, as a journalist, he has so much experience compared to this person who was just born, you know. And then he also felt insulted in a way because he knew that he had been through this script so many times that that the print was almost worn out in places, means that he probably edited, he probably crossed out things such that the printing on the paper was already kind of worn out, right? So he thought that with his effort, his repeated checking, he thought that the script was near perfect. And well, he acknowledged that there may be some edits required here and there, but to say that it requires serious rewriting, it means that it needs to be completely looked over, reorganized, and rewritten. So as a person who has this much experience, I would imagine that being pretty insulting, and therefore this was the response. So how do you know this person was unhappy? There are many clues over here. Number one, it's quite insulting to be asking someone that is that young and seemingly inexperienced to be working on something that you take a lot of pride in. Alright, so two pieces of details. This will be the two of them. If you're not sure what hackles are, you can imagine a very aggressive dog that is being very territorial. Okay, so territorial animal. That's what you can imagine. Okay, next question. From paragraph 4, why would he reread his shorthand shorthand for the interview with this person for the 1,000th time? So shorthand here, actually this is how shorthand looks like. If you're trained in this, you are able to read this, and this is basically a simplification of words. So this is what some older people, is kind of like a forgotten skill. For some of us, cursive is a forgotten skill, but shorthand over here basically is to help people who need to write very, very, very quickly, take notes. Alright, so basically, why did he read his notes for the 1,000th time? So we have to think a little bit more. If we know that this is an inference question, we think back about the context. So we try to match the pieces of evidence that we have, either before paragraph 4 or after paragraph 4, to get some clue about why this is important to this person, or why is it so significant that this person reads it for the 1,000th time. So over here we can see that the notebooks were mentioned previously in paragraph 1. It's a treasured notebook. Okay, something that was used in the past. It was old. Okay, it was useful. It basically is a work tool. Alright, and now it sounds as though this is for work, but we know that it's not necessarily for work because this man is on the platform and he seems pretty ancient, pretty old. And over here, if we see paragraph 5, we see that Ray Bradbury was mentioned. And in what context was he mentioned? He was mentioned in a form of an interview, and the conversation seems pretty we can summarize it as someone being very inspired, someone being very amazed by the person he got to interview. So if he's very amazed and he's very in awe of this person he has to interview, this is like an accomplished writer, and he gets to interview an accomplished writer, why do you think he wants to read this shorthand again and again and again? So you can say it's probably because he looks up to him. He felt like it's a lifetime accomplishment to be able to interview someone so famous. Okay, so for example, if you get to interview one of the biggest directors on earth right now, I guess that would be something to be boasting about, or something you will look back on very fondly. So very importantly is you must be able to give the correct magnitude when you explain this. For some students, if they say that, oh, it's only admiration or he likes, then the magnitude is not quite the same. Okay, it doesn't show why this person has to read this so many times and obviously treasure this interview so much. Okay, next question. This here is a clear in your own words answer, and the issue with this is that many students were explaining using a similar word as was given in the quotation. So if I were to think about words related to magician, I would think about something that is perhaps very it's a captivating performance. I can imagine this person conjuring something out of thin air. Okay, very good with words, something magical, could be something maybe very out of this world, something that captures the attention of people. It could be phenomenal, it could be something that mesmerizes the audience, right? Or something that captivates the audience attention. Okay, so if I know this is the words that is associated with the magician. Let me try to make it make sense, right? So how would a writer do that? Instead of magic tricks, you use your words to do so. You will do this by writing, correct? So you don't have to write the word words, but you can imply that this was something that was written. Okay, so you see that there are two possible options here for you to explain. Now, if you say that it is just a very good piece of writing, it's not the same as magician, because the idea of magician here, you can imagine people creating something out of thin air, right? So it's very captivating. It's something that's very, very incredible. But if you say that, oh, this person is just very good, or he's an experienced writer, it doesn't quite capture the idea of magical. Okay, so if you have written this, he's proficient, he's experienced, he's skilled. I suspect I might have given some students this answer by error, by mistake. Okay, so if I've marked you correct when you've written skill, please change that score, okay? Okay, let's carry on. Okay, what evidence shows you that he's a great writer? So there are 3 pieces of evidence that you could accept. Okay, but if I were to rank these over here, which one shows that he's a great, recognized, or in this case, we can use proficient. Maybe proficient not the best word. Skilled, experienced, renowned. I can see these 3. For me, which one shows that he's being recognized by others? I would much prefer take this piece of evidence and this piece of evidence. Okay? Okay, now going on, you can see this question over here. This was really not very well done because some students really missed out the keywords within the question. Now, number 1, the question tells you that there was some recollection about the parent's death, and realizing that when the person is talking about the parent, it was in a way to show that the person was not traumatized about the way the parents passed away, and they want you to prove how this person was able to get over his parents' death, right? So the focus here is really about Dan. It's not about Aunt Nellie. It's not about the brother. So really the focus is about this over here, parents' death, and you have to prove that this person is not traumatized, not grieving, okay, not fearful, maybe having PTSD when thinking about something that is so this particular tragedy, right? Yeah, so you can see that the idea is that this person is not feeling any of these. So we look at it. There are 3 possible ways you can address this, 3 pieces of evidence that you can address this. Number 1, and when they're talking about how the parents died, which is being bombed by the German bombs, okay, they were able to make fun or make light of the mispronunciation by Aunt Nellie. And when they recall the parents, right, there isn't this sense of like, oh, you know, my parents abandoned me, my parents weren't there for me, my parents died in a very tragic way, but they only remembered the mother's rosy cheeks and dark liquid eyes that seemed to be filled with unconditional love. So you're only thinking about the good things, only remembering the good things. Now the next one is again another laughter, another piece of evidence that shows that when they talk about this, it's not very solemn kind of experience. It's not everybody, you know, tiptoeing around the topic. It's something that that is being talked about in a very light-hearted way. Okay, so this here shows that they are not tiptoeing around the matter. They are joking in a very casual, light-hearted way. Okay, so importantly is that before you craft your answer, you are able to write these kind of things down. So it helps you to brainstorm and clarify your thinking, and you're not trying to form your ideas along the way. right? So you are already forming your ideas when you jot all these little notes by the side, and then when you write your answer, you are piecing together the different pieces of clues that you have already gotten, and when you write out, then you're more coherent. Okay, so this is how it will look like. I really want to emphasize that when you write this is the structure. So please do not do such a way whereby you are just writing quote A, B, C equal to not traumatized, and then that's your answer. This one is a no-go. Okay, please don't write this way because you're not explaining. Okay, or some students write the entire thing in one sentence. Okay, the best way to do this is to write each individual one in one explanation, one sentence itself, one explanation this way. If you need more space, you can always write it at a blank space. You can indicate that you need more space and you write below, right? So this here, please practice doing this so that it's clearer. You can see that there are a few quotations that I've put here, and hopefully that helps you to explain it clearly bit by bit. Okay, next one. Despite recalling, okay, this is the advice that was given by the marker. Let me skip ahead. Okay, this next one here, the question is about how it shows that it's very desolate. So desolate over here, you can imagine a place that is empty, lifeless. This here shows you the definition. So we're looking out for something that is in contrast with this idea of emptiness or lifelessness. So I must find words that show that it's very desolate, and when I look through, I'm not looking for something that is new or modern. So the shiny idea there doesn't is not applicable. I'm looking out for the next two over here because they're talking about the train. So these are the two possible options that show that it's not lifeless, it's not an empty space, and this is the suggested answer from the marker. Okay, same reminder, if you see something that is used in the text itself, let's try not to use the same word again, like this here, the same root words. All right, okay, next one here. What do you think happened to him at the end of the story? So there are a few euphemisms being used. At the end of the story is after what's happening here, something waiting for him. So what happened to him at the end? He's not literally going somewhere, all right? He's going somewhere where he won't be needing something anymore. It sounds a little bit like, okay, is he starting a new life somewhere? And then the somewhere that was mentioned is that he had hoped to see rosy cheeks and dark liquid eyes, right? Who has rosy cheeks and dark liquid eyes? And if you remember reading this from paragraph 6, you know that this is the mother. The mother had already died, wiped out by a German bomb. So what happened to him? He likely passed away or died. Okay, so not acceptable is if you have any hedging over here. Hedging means that you are very tentative, you're trying to be very safe, you're saying that, he likely had died, he maybe had died. You want a committed answer. Alright, now the next one, very importantly, to help you identify the correct emotion, the correct feeling, best is if you are able to annotate by the side of your paragraph in your passage. So your passage shouldn't be clean from annotations because it is for you to be able to analyze well. So we look at this. There are a few ideas over here. Firstly, he took out his ancient notebook. It was a gift from 70 years ago. He is trying to think like, wow, where had all the time gone? 70 years had passed in the blink of an eye. He's looking out for his old contributions to the culture, media industry. He had been involved in a feature film. So he's thinking about these things with with a high level of fondness. I would say it's nostalgia. Okay, next one. Like I said over here, he was actually very proud of the script. Okay, and he felt that this Solomon Peebles over here was very young, very inexperienced, and the fact that he now has to turn to him, Solomon Peebles, for advice, for feedback, to run through it one more time and then to make the changes. It's very insulting to him. He had felt that he had so much more experience compared to this young punk, right, so to speak. So he felt insulted, disrespected, but I won't say it's to the extent of being hateful of that person. It's just a very deep sense of annoyance, right? Alright, then this is likely to be disdain. Next one, I would say that it is quite clear that it is a feeling of awe, a feeling of amazement, right? Then the last one, you can see that even after the parents passed away, he was brought up by Aunt Nellie. Okay, Aunt Nellie was someone he remembers very, very fondly, and they have a very close relationship. They have a lot of laughter, a lot of jokes. So the main feeling and emotion that Dan feels about this person is affection. Alright, so I hope that this little clip here has helped you to identify the reasons why you weren't doing so well, and I would really love for you to do a quick reflection to explain something that you are going to do differently when you're doing another narrative comprehension. Alright, hopefully this has helped you. If there are questions, please feel free to post them. Okay, thank you.